What would you do if you had unlimited resources to accomplish something great in the world? This is the challenge that legendary investor Warren Buffett posed to his children in 2006. That's when the second wealthiest man in the United States announced he was leaving the majority of his fortune to philanthropy. Buffett's oldest son, Howard, accepted the challenge. With a $3 billion endowment from his father, he's helping the nearly 1 billion people worldwide who live with hunger every day. I sat down with Howard Buffett to get his thoughts on philanthropy and the cause that he hopes will one day put him out of business. The book is called 40 Chances, Finding Hope in a Hungry World. Your father writes the foreword, and he writes, and he suggests most of the 7 billion people on earth found their destinies determined at birth. And he goes on to say, we do sit in the shade of the trees planted by others. But then later, about 400 pages in, you've got Africa's first woman president, and she says, we were bypassed by education, de-skilled by years of war and instability. And it really gets kind of the heart of what your father's saying and what she's saying. And I'm sure you must sit there and think, I've hit the lottery in many respects, and many of the people that you're helping did not. Is that something that drives you, fuels you, or is it something you stay up at night thinking about?
It absolutely drives me from the standpoint that I'm reminded every day of how many people don't have what I have. And I'm also reminded that I didn't earn it. You start in a place in the world where you either have limited opportunities or many opportunities. And being born when I was born, who I was born, with the parents I had in this country was a phenomenal opportunity. And so what's really irritating to me is when I hear other people say, well, I did it, they can do it. But the truth is, it isn't that simple. I find that really frustrating in people when they feel that just because they had this incredible fortune to be born in this country, in a system that allows you to excel, that they shouldn't take some of their own resources and support people who haven't had that same opportunity.
When it comes to philanthropy, you've got kind of a different point of view, and it's almost, the book's interesting in a way, it's almost kind of holding a mirror up to philanthropists saying, hey, look in the mirror, reevaluate things in a way, isn't it?
Well, look, there's no question that we haven't been very successful in a lot of what we've tried to do in the last 40 or 50 years, because if we had, we wouldn't have the scale of problems that we have. So I think that just is by itself the mirror, and you need to say, look, we need to do some things differently, we need to think differently, we need to be more innovative, we need to take more risk, we need to do a lot of things that, unfortunately, to some degree, the dynamics that we have in philanthropy don't support. I mean, I'm not going to stand up at my fundraiser as a public charity and say, I want to show you the 3 biggest failures we had this year. Nobody's going to write me checks. So I'm not motivated, to be honest. I'm not motivated. It doesn't mean I'm dishonest. It just means I'm not motivated to put out front those things that didn't work well. And we're in the best position we could possibly be. As a private family foundation, I don't have to have a fundraiser. I don't look to other people for money. I can take the risks, and I can say we failed at this. And so one of our biggest goals at our foundation is to take that risk and then let people know what didn't work.
One of the things that comes up quite a bit, we can't use Western thinking to solve African challenges. And perhaps that's one of the problems, is there's guys out there who look very much like you going to Africa saying, I'm going to write this check, we're going to do this. And you talk about how there's a stove put in the house and then you drive by and it's outside the house, that they didn't want the stove. I mean, talk to us about some of that disconnect we see.
Well, the easiest way to say it is, if I hadn't been to most countries on the continent of Africa and spent a lot of years traveling, speaking to thousands of farmers, I would be doing the same thing. I would be sitting in the United States thinking how I think, thinking within the paradigm that we've developed, pretty much feeling like I have all these same resources to use to solve the problem. And the truth is, I don't. When you land in another continent, it isn't just Africa, everything is different. The culture is different, the infrastructure availability is different, the policy is different, the governance is different, the rule of law is different, everything is different. So, I can't just pick up here and end up over there and say my idea is going to work. Most of the time we fail to listen very well. So for me, it's really about how do we listen, and then how do we understand the context of what that problem is in, and then we need to figure out how to solve it. And 9 out of 10 times, it won't be what I thought it was going to be when I went there.
And one of the things you talk about is the old way: the rich dole it out, the poor passively accept it, and you say that's ending. So what is if you were to look at the landscape and draw a picture of what the future looks like, a successful future, what would it look like?
Well, it would be more balanced. It would be more balanced environmentally. It would be more balanced financially. It would be more balanced in terms of opportunity. Those are big challenges. I mean, it's not going to be easy to get there. But I think the change that has to take place is that most people in the world have to have some kind of opportunity within the context of how they live and where they live and what those opportunities are. But they have to have some opportunity to become economically independent. They have to be able to feed their family. They have to feel that their kids are going to be able to go to school. You know, everybody in the world wants the same thing, except a very, very minute percent of people who are really in a radical group. And they want to improve their life for their kids. So it's not rocket science. It's just, you know, it's the tough part of rolling up your sleeves and getting the changes made that need to happen.
But you talk about the interlocking quality of, you know, the fact that this famine and war and all of these things are kind of tied together. One of your first stories is about sitting across from a warlord, and I'm sure it must have gone through your head. Here I am, I've got the white hat, I'm coming in, I'm trying to change things. This guy's got the black hat, but it's such an interesting, unique dynamic, but food is power in a sense, isn't it?
The truth is, I don't think there are white and black hats. I think that there are some pure evil people. There's no question about it. You can give them a black hat, but there's a lot of people that do things because they're able to get by with it, because they don't feel they have choices. I mean, if you go to the World Bank or IMF or anybody else, you know, they'll say, well, this is, you know, poverty is $1.25 a day in terms of earning power. They always put an economic value on it. But I can tell you, it's not that simple. I was in DRC, I think about a year ago, and there's a cocoa project we're involved with there. And this farmer's talking to me, and he says, you know, the people here tell me I used to live on $1 a day. And he says, I don't know if I lived on $1 a day. He says, what I know is I couldn't feed my kids 3 meals a day, and sometimes no meals a day. And I knew my kids couldn't go to school because I couldn't pay the fees. And he says, now they tell me I live on $6 a day. He says, I don't know if I live on $6 a day. And the truth is, it doesn't matter whether it's 4, 5, 6, or 7. To him, what matters is, he says to me, he says, my kids are in school. And he's very proud. All my kids are in school. I can pay all the school fees. They eat every day, and they eat well every day, and we even have a little money left over. So, you know, it's not always in economic terms, and we think so much that way in the world that we live in because everything around us is in economic terms.
Let's talk about philanthropy. It's become a business. There's consultants, there's advisors, there's PR strategies, there's these fundraising efforts, there's the balls, the galas. And that is so far removed from the experience that you have. And again, it gets to what you were talking about. You know, when you have the gala, you've got to have the little 4-minute video that shows this or that, how successful they are. But so much of it is the business and keeping the business going. You want to put yourself out of business. It's a different strategy.
I think that, well, I'm on the board of a group, a nonprofit in Africa, that their strategy is to be out of business in 2020. And I think that's great. And basically the attitude is, if we can't get it done by then somebody else ought to try it, because we're not getting it done. So, you know, our foundation is out of business after 40 years from 2006, when my dad gave us what we call the big gift. And, you know, I think that if you have this attitude that I'm going to be out of business in 40 years or 20 years or whatever the numbers you pick, then you're going to behave differently. You even hire people differently, because you're going to hire people that are going to take risks, not people that are going to sit back and think the status quo is okay. You're going to try things that you know probably aren't going to work, but that's okay, because that's how you're going to get your learning experience into that compact time frame that you've set. And so all of a sudden, you're thinking about, the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. So you're thinking about, you know, how am I going to get as much done as I can get done in this time frame? And it's really a different mindset.
Do you feel like the wealthy have an obligation? And I want to kind of touch on the thing that, you know, we've seen in some countries where there's an abundance of wealth, where this is kind of something that they're not used to, giving away the wealth. What would you suggest to somebody who's just, perhaps this isn't part of their culture, about what it's like to give?
Well, a big part of it is exactly that. It's not part of their culture. We've actually struggled with this a little bit in South Africa. We've been working in South Africa for over a decade and a half, and it isn't that they're in a giving culture, but they don't have a tax system that encourages it. It's not something that they can always afford to do. So there's different pieces of it that fall into the decision making and what drives it. But I just boil it down to simple terms. I don't know if the number is 10 million, 50 million, 100 million. I don't know what the number is for everybody. Everybody's going to have a different number. There's a number that when you have $100 million, okay, I don't need my fifth yacht. I don't own a yacht, but I don't need a fifth house. I don't need, whatever it is. I don't need another jet. What I know is I have excess wealth. And look, if you earned it, you pick the number. I don't think people should tell you what that number is or what you should do with that money. But I do think you should be able to recognize the fact that at some point you have everything you need in your life, okay? And then if you want, double it, and then feel really comfortable. But what do you do with the rest of it? What you do with the rest of it is try to be as intelligent about how you were earning it and give it away intelligently. And everybody has a point of excess. Everybody won't get to that point. But those who are very wealthy will have that point.
Why focus on this particular issue? Because you do talk about, at the beginning of the book, about nobody ever starved saving a tree, I think is how you put it. So this wasn't your initial focus. Why?
So I started out in conservation. It's never left my heart. I mean, mountain gorillas, cheetahs, polar bears, some of the things that we've funded for years, we still do a little bit of that. But I learned that phrase, what Dennis Avery said to me, no one will starve to save a tree in 1992, has never left me because it's so true. If people are trying to survive day by day, week by week, they don't care what resource they destroy. They don't care if water is polluted. They don't care if soil is eroded. They can't care about that because they have no choices. And so what I learned was you got to give those people choices. You've got to give those people an opportunity to be, as I said earlier, economic independence is a big piece of it. If you can put them to work, or you can have a farmer who has better yields and more productivity so he can enter a marketplace that he couldn't enter before. Whatever it is, the end result, the exit strategy has to be, I'm going to take people permanently out of poverty. They won't destroy the environment. They won't pollute water. They won't ruin the soil. So, it was a lesson that took me a little while to learn. But now that we're doing what we're doing, it is so much more obvious to me than it ever was.
We don't get to put the words on our epitaph, but if you were to, would it be farmer, or a farmer who tried to help other farmers, or how would you like to be remembered? What would your legacy be?
Well, I mean, I love business, and farming is a business, and I think people forget that. But I think, the legacy I would like to have is just that we change some people's thinking. We change them to think bigger, faster, more urgent, take more risk. I mean, I really want to see thinking change. I want to see people that are more willing to fail and talk about that failure. I think today in this world, we have big problems and we are too unwilling to be honest about what it's going to take to solve them. Some of them don't fit our feeling or our definition of what's humane sometimes. It doesn't fit what's convenient. It doesn't fit what's comfortable. I mean, it takes us out of our comfort zone. So we need to get out of that. We need to get out of the comfort zone. We need to take the challenges, and we need to take the risk. So I want people to think differently. That's my two words, think differently, and then that will make you act differently.
Well, I know you don't like to distribute the black hats and the white hats, but I think you've earned a white one. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here.
As Howard Buffett suggests, a key element in attacking world hunger is to focus more clearly on the root causes. We'll explore what's being done to change global thinking on hunger next.